Businesses tend to focus on revenue, profits, and getting loyal customers. But how about healthy workplace culture? You're listening to How I Turned the Corner, where Kendra Prospero leads eye-opening conversations that most business leaders avoid. The right way to address employee challenges. Listen to real-life stories of workplace struggles, giving you valuable advice on what must be done to make every employee truly satisfied and fulfilled in their job. This is for leaders who want to create great company cultures and for employees who want to do something to put an end to suffering at work in the most practical ways possible. Here's your host, Kendra.
Many of us founders and entrepreneurs start our businesses because we get itchy trying to solve a big problem. My guest today is a remarkable serial entrepreneur with so many successes in his treasure chest. He has lived the dream that most of us founders have had. He has started 6 businesses. Some of them have gone public. Some of them have been bought. And now he is giving back. I think most of us kind of want this sort of exit. In 2016, he took over as the CEO of Casebook. It's a SaaS company, but it was actually started by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, began as a nonprofit, and with all his amazing knowledge is now throwing himself into this company. It's a public benefit corporation now, as well as a certified B-Corp. And they are solving some of the biggest challenges we have in our society. Imagine being someone who needs government assistance and then being faced with caseworkers who have your life in their hands and they are dealing with pen and paper. Casebook is a software platform that makes this all more efficient for everyone involved, making it better for the caseworkers as well as for the people who are needing these services. I could talk to him all day about this, but what's really remarkable is what his team says about working there. They are some of the most passionate people and most committed people to the work that they do. It gets them out of bed every day. So today we get to hear from Tristan Louis's numerous experiences on how he's built multiple organizations and has had so many successes and what it's meant for him and for his teams. Tristan Louis, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
It's a pleasure to be here. And I feel like I don't know if I'm going to be able to live up to this introduction, but I'll try.
I'm sure you can. So tell us a little bit more about your backstory. I mean, as much as we want to hear about Casebook as well, I want to hear kind of your journey a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I got lucky in that I started as an entrepreneur very early on in the beginning of the dot-com days. And it was like the early 90s. Very few people had heard about the internet. I happened to have lucked out into it and saw it as the next big thing. Along with a bunch of other 20-somethings getting straight out of college who didn't really have a clue about how business worked, we figured we were going to change the world. And we kind of made it up along the way, made the rules as we went along the way and figured out how to build businesses that became transformational. Back in the 90s, I ended up launching one of the first online magazines. It was a magazine about the internet industry, so it was kind of a circular type of thing. But we invented the idea of having a conference and a magazine connected, and we started experimenting with online streaming, which was very, very new and really didn't work very well back then.
Right.
Worked and managed to take 2 companies public based on that premise. One first in the internet arena and the other one in the general development arena. Tried to launch an e-commerce shop. That didn't work out so hot, crashed and burned, then went and launched one of the first platform around podcasting.
Okay.
I know people talk about podcasting these days, and I had a little bit of a background around starting what is being seen as podcasting today. That also bumped into the dot-com crash at that point, at which point, like, everybody was throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and everything related to the internet was considered uncool and untouchable. Navigated through a rough period, and had to lay off over 50% of my staff, and then rebuild from there, rebuild confidence, because when you do that massive a reduction in workforce, you really have to think about the people that are left behind.
Yeah.
We navigated that to an eventual successful exit to a large bank. And there, what the bank wanted to acquire from us was our ability to drive change using technology.
Okay.
So they put us in charge of a small unit within the bank, and with a large mandate. The mandate was essentially make us relevant in the 21st century.
It's hard for banking.
And I was like, oh yeah, sure, we'll do that. I can do that. Not really fully understanding the challenge, but looked at basically what payment would look like in the 21st century. Ended up building some of the most critical payment components of our world, like the backend for PayPal, for Google Pay, for Amazon. Continued on, ended up with another bank and built the backend for Apple Pay. And then the 2008 crisis happened. And being a senior director in a large bank, I was called into the Fed, and there was a room with a lot of very smart people who were all panicked. The thing is that in this room were some of the smartest people in the country in the banking world, and the collective understanding was that if credit were to freeze up for 2 weeks, the whole economic system, just of the United States, but of the Western world, would collapse.
Wow.
2 weeks. 2 weeks to bring the whole world to its knees. That made me realize that, you know what, startups are actually pretty safe. Because generally you freak out in a startup when you've got less than a couple of months worth of money in the bank. So when you start looking at it through this particular lens, the startup is probably one of the most stable places where you can work, even though that is not generally common understanding. I had to navigate a couple of projects along the way. In 2011, launched a company that was at the intersection of gaming and advertising. I had gotten very sick, almost died in the process, and realized, my heart is not in building payment systems. My heart is not in doing this stuff. I want to get back to the startup life. I want to get back to actually doing something that has an impact. And I had started looking at gamification as one of those things that could change behavior. Mm-hmm. And so I was interested in that stuff. That ended up becoming a company that was acquired by a large advertising conglomerate. And then I went on and worked for a political campaign after that in 2016. It wasn't the campaign that won. And that left me in a deep funk because as someone who had spent the previous roughly 20 years working on technology to make publishing and speech and connecting people and influencing people via the internet more capable, I felt that we had built tools of destruction. And so it was hard, looking back at the legacy that you were going to leave behind and go, well, we haven't made the world a better place. Along the way, I was approached by the Annie Casey Foundation, which is one of the largest foundations in the child welfare space in the United States. They were founded by the founder of UPS, who came from a broken family, and he felt that, there needed to be proper reforms around child welfare. And the problem they were trying to figure out was how many children are in the child welfare system. You'd think that, this is the 21st century, it would be relatively easy to have that information. It turns out no one knows.
Wow.
Today, still, no one knows. Along the way, I started looking at what was happening around child welfare, around juvenile justice, around homelessness, domestic violence, reentry and reinsertion, the kind of programs that about people getting out of jails, and realized that all those things were interconnected, and all those things had a couple of things in common. One, it seemed like the 21st century did not exist there, that the 20th century was barely starting to get there. Pen and paper everywhere, systems that were being custom built and costing millions or tens of millions of dollars, being rolled out years after they had been requested, always, ended up failing the people. and trying to solve, one of the most fundamental set of problems in the world, poverty.
Right.
Now, that's a lot of money that's being spent on this stuff. And just in the US, $1.1 trillion, that's trillion with a T, is being spent on this.
What would it take just to put that money back into the system, right?
Of that $1.1 trillion, 29 cents on the dollar makes it to recipients.
That's just heartbreaking.
So that's $710 billion every year that are being spent here, going to middlemen, to continue doing the same thing that we've been doing again and again.
Wow.
And so from that little idea of how many children are in the child welfare system, I started wondering, well, how do we know what kind of data we should be looking at and what works?
Right.
Well, it turns out there's no standard definitions around poverty. There's no agreements around what pieces of data we should be capturing. And there's no agreement as to what works and what doesn't, because everybody's capturing a different thing and saying, well, my thing work and my thing work. So we decided that at Casebook, we were going to build that data set. And that in order to build that data set, we were going to build a set of tools that we would give to caseworkers to allow them to modernize their world and allow them to capture information quickly about the people that they're interacting with and that they're connecting services to, and report on that information. And sitting on the back of all this, a standardized data set that we could start analyzing, so we could go, this type of intervention for these types of people based on demographic and geographic factors leads to these types of successful or unsuccessful outcomes.
Right. Well, and you can get into the analytics of it now.
By doing rinsing and repeat on this, our goal is to find what is kind of the holy grail, right? Which is what works for whom, and how do we, on a multi-generational basis, start really influencing the trajectory of poverty.
Yeah.
Because a child that enters the child welfare system is going to be an adult that will be in the welfare system.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing.
You take a kid out of their house for 6 weeks, at any age after 6 months, and you drop their chances of graduating high school by 94%.
Wow.
6 weeks.
That's amazing.
There's got to be a better way of doing things.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we're building the tools that hopefully will help accelerate the end of poverty by bringing
Beautiful.
Technology.
Well, so tell me then, tell me a little bit about your team. Who do you have on your team?
What I have on my team are people who like solving problems and doing things that matter. A big line from a recruiting standpoint is come help us build things that matter. And that's really what it comes down to. We have people that are coming in with a sense of mission, with a goal of actually doing something greater than themselves. Because ultimately, I think that people can take any kind of job, especially people in the technology world. There are plenty of opportunities. But what people stay at jobs for is meaning, is really a sense of connection that their work is making the world a better place.
Yeah.
And so we're hiring those types of people. It's
amazing to me that statistically, I'm sure you've heard these statistics, but for the last almost 60 years, we've been tracking satisfaction at work. And for 60 years, 3 out of 4 people have self-reported that they hate their job. I mean, that is just mind-blowing to me. Who benefits from that? I mean, I can't think of a customer that thrives when you've got someone hating their job. Bosses don't thrive. The bottom line doesn't thrive. And yet this number has been around for so long. And I agree with you completely. People want to know that the work that they do matters. And if they don't feel that way, I think they report out that they hate their job, and it really hits the bottom line. So what do you see as kind of the linchpin of your culture? Talk about your culture a little bit.
Yeah, so there's a few components. There's not one thing. And the truth is that our culture is a system and a system of behaviors. We have a set of core values, the idea that we are transparent, we are accountable, we are working together, we I mean, really, at the end of the day, values are empties unless there's actually behaviors attached to them.
Yep.
But more importantly, what we have is that we have a system where communication goes from the bottom up, not from the top down.
Wow.
Because in order for people to really understand and connect to a sense of mission, they have to have some level of agency. And they have to have some level of control over their part of the picture. Our job as leaders, in my view, is to kind of give them a direction, say, this is what we want to get to, reiterate, what that direction is, and then kind of coach them one way, this way, a little bit more this way, a little bit more that way, or challenge them when they're bringing some stuff and go, okay, have you thought about this? So that they really take ownership into the direction that we're taking. I am proud that most of the decisions that are being made in our organization are not made by me or by any of the leaders of our organization. They're made at lower levels. The way we look at it is that a decision is only escalated if no one at that level can make it, not because they don't have the agency to make it, but because based on all the information that they've looked at and based on all the peers that they've talked to, they are not armed with the necessary context to make that decision. And so they escalate it up until it eventually escalates all the way up to the senior leadership team, which works with me.
Yeah. Now, did you have this in place with your earlier companies as well? Or was this something you learned along the way?
I think it's something I've learned along the way. I think it's a continuous learning machine, really, at the end of the day, right? Where it's like, it's a process that exists as it is today, but that may be different tomorrow based on new information that we're getting. Because at the end of the day, what we are about is being a learning organization and making better decisions tomorrow than we are making today.
Right. Yeah.
I've done that across multiple companies. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. I think that's the other part of the critical decision-making process, right? Is that not all the decisions you're going to make are going to be the right decisions. But your ability to then go and look at that process and go, okay, why did we get to that decision? Not, you're a screw up, because in some organization, unfortunately, there's going to be punishment for making the bad decision. In our organization, it's more about what have you learned from this? What can we do to avoid this happening again in the future?
Right.
Not, well, this happened, this is a terrible thing, but really, what are we learning from this that allows us to be better tomorrow?
Well, and I suspect too that perspective is even stronger for you now after your experience with the banking industry and knowing that the entire economic system is going to collapse in 2 weeks versus, now you're like, yeah, it's just a bug in your software. You're fine, right?
Well, and the thing is that there's relatively few decisions that are irreversible. Okay, if I were to lead people into a war or something along those lines, the level of consequences are, slightly different.
Right.
But the truth is that the software that we provide does have an impact. And if we get some of those choices wrong, we could have a very negative impact on the world. That said, we also have to admit that we're not perfect. And so we are going to get some things wrong. We have to be comfortable about the fact that we are going to get some things wrong. And being comfortable with that allows us to then go, okay, well, we got this wrong. How do we fix it? Focus on fixing the problem and fix every small problem before they become big problems.
Yeah. So how would you have described yourself as a founder back in the 90s? What was your leadership style in the 90s?
Confused and totally wrong. I think I was an accidental founder in a lot of ways. In that, I think there's a couple of types of entrepreneurs. There are people that go, "Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur,"
right?
And I don't think that those people actually are entrepreneurs. And then there are people who are like, "Oh, that's a problem, and someone ought to fix this." Oh, no one's fixing this? All right, then I'll fix it.
Yeah, that's my story.
And those are the entrepreneurs. Those are the real entrepreneurs. Those are the people that are actually going, okay, let me bang my head on this until I figure out how to fix that particular part of the world and make the world a better place in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Along the way, there's a million things that you don't know how to do. I'm sure that you've had the same experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, well, okay, I don't know how to do this. Well, you learn, right? You either find the people that can teach you how to do this, or find the people that actually know how to do it and hire them, or you learn how to do it yourself. And that willingness to be curious and to be continuously learning is what allows you to become better at what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make a ton of mistakes along the way.
Right.
And hopefully, with every step of the way, you do a better job. I'd say I'm a better leader now than I was 20 years ago, but I'm a worse leader now than I will be a year from now.
Yeah. Yep. I always say that too. That's my mantra actually, is I have a poster right here that says, I am not the leader I need to be a year from now, but I will grow. Yeah. So what was your first corner you turned as a leader? Like, what was the first big aha moment where you realized, kind of that face plant moment where you're like, I am not doing this right? And what was your significant thing that you shifted?
I think the first time I made a significant shift was to understand that as a leader, your job is to influence, not to direct.
Okay. Yeah.
That you set the direction, in terms of this is the mountain we want to climb, this is the ocean we want to get across. But that beyond that, it's all about, influencing people in this direction or that direction, but letting them make their own mistakes. In some cases, you can see the mistake coming. You're like, oh my God, this is going to go so wrong. But you have to hold back and let them make the mistake so they can learn from that mistake and not make it again. You jump in, they're not learning anything.
Well, and they feel micromanaged. And that's definitely the number one thing we hear, is that's why someone hates a job, is they're micromanaged. They want to do their work. And if they're constantly being told by their leader how to do it, how is that interesting?
Yeah, I think you highlighted right there. They're either feeling micromanaged or feeling like they've got a seagull manager. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so the secret really is figuring out how to set up checkpoints on a regular basis, right? So that they can come into that space and brainstorm with you and come to their own decisions around the particular problem that they're bringing to the table based on, the questions that you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, as a leader, I think you're leading more by asking questions than by giving directions, just so that people can actually internalize the question and start thinking about how they're going to get to the place where you'd like them to get to, but by themselves.
Yeah. Because
they have to really internalize that process, and they have to really internalize the decision in order to buy into the decision and in order to push the organization in the right direction. As a leader, your job is to make sure that the core values that you're setting on the cultural level are continuing to remain as the boundaries. So that if you are seeing someone deviate from those, you remind them that the core values are there,
right,
and that they exist for a reason. And ask them, why are they feeling that deviating from that core value is the right path? It could be that the core value is not correct, at which point that leads to a much wider organizational discussion around, we need to reassess our core values, or reassess that one core value in that particular case. Or it may be that the person is like, oh, wow, I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, exactly. Or you say, we aren't aligned and I don't think we're a fit anymore.
Yeah.
And you let them go. Because it's usually, my experience has been, we do eat our own dog food, so to speak, at Turning the Corner, because we want everyone to love their job. We better have people love their job here. But the one area that has definitely sometimes been challenging has been a year down the road, seeing someone deviating away from a value and then having to make some of those tough decisions. It's usually you can catch that in an interviewing process if they're aligned with your core values, but long term, you can deviate away and you got to let them go because they're not a fit anymore. They're a fit for someone else for sure. So I noticed on your website how diverse your team is. And then I saw a lot of diversity, just you've spoken about that a lot in the past. A couple years ago, I committed to having a more diverse team. My team looked diverse from some angles. We were dominated by white women, but not diverse at all, right? And so a couple of years ago, I really committed to having a more diverse team. And now I look around and have a ton of representation now. But when people ask me why this was so important to me, I found myself answering with really altruistic reasons, like it's just the right thing to do. I'm curious though, from your more seasoned perspective, like why was this important to you? Like what have been the benefits that you've seen for all your organizations for having a more diverse organization?
So we build a product that is to be used, hopefully, around the world by a lot of people, right? And that's what we're aiming to do. In order to do so, we need to have a product that can appeal to a wide number of people. How can we build a product that appeals to a wide number of people if we all look the same?
Right.
From our standpoint, our diversity brings a diversity of opinion, diversity of experiences, diversity of viewpoints. And all those are working as filters around the questions and the challenges that are being brought to bear in terms of figuring out how to build and execute on our overall mission. Mm. And so building a team that is diverse, and we don't really think of our team as diverse. We think of our team as equal. We talk about equal representation. We talk about equal equity across the organization. And from a diversity standpoint, what we've set as a goal is, look, there's a census in the United States, right? It gives you kind of a distribution of both gender and race. Why is our company not lining up with that census in terms of the overall distribution? Not just by having a bunch of colored people and women at the bottom and a bunch of white men sitting at the top, but really across every echelon of the organization, at every level of the organization, and then across every vertical of the organization. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying we've got it right. I'm not saying that we get it right all the time, but that's what we strive for. And by, again, setting that direction from the top level, saying this is what we're going to get to, this is what our goal is, and having that influence every decision that we make around hiring. So diversity starts at the top of your hiring funnel, right? If you're getting a bunch of white candidates in your funnel, you're not going to get a diverse organization.
Right.
But if you start fixing the representation at the top of your funnel, the probability that you get more diverse employees at the end of it is much higher. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of why we structure it in that particular way.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say is what it would be a reason that another company should commit to a more diverse organization? Or let's say it's a organization that is isn't serving the diverse population that you are. Like what are other reasons?
What organization is not serving a diverse population these days?
Okay.
If you're selling, unless you're a white nationalist serving right. White nationalists, right? If you're selling a broad-based product, pretty much anywhere
right.
around the world, you're serving a diverse public. There is really no product that you can think of that is not going to be better by serving a diverse public.
That's great. That's a great answer to that. So yeah, it's interesting to me because this is a journey that just it seemed natural, but really getting to like the bottom line is what so many leaders and entrepreneurs need to hear. And that's it. What company is not serving a diverse population? Well, so I want to talk to you about the public benefit and the B-Corp piece. So we were actually on track to become a B-Corp back in 2019. And then I had a horrible end of the year and I had to really divert all my energy to just making payroll, honestly. So we had to pause all the activities, but we were maybe 80% of the way there, maybe 70%. But tell me about that. What was that journey like? Were you a part of that when it became a B Corp?
Yeah. Actually, that was kind of instrumental to both the PBC definition and the B Corp. And there's quite a change between the two. The public benefit corporation is actually a legal structure. So think of it as like a C Corp, but with social responsibilities embedded in both its charter and its bylaws. A B Corp is a certification by B Corp Lab that attests that you are really following those kinds of rules across the different stakeholders, your employees, the environment, the world in general, your suppliers. And it was important to us because it was yet another representation of our values. We've been spending a lot of time talking about values and talking about belonging and talking about connecting. To me, making sure that we had a B Corp would clearly state that what we're doing in terms of building something that matters, building something that makes the world a better place, is not only something that we're saying, but it's something that we're standing by from a legal standpoint, the public benefit structure, and that we've asked other people to tell us whether we are on the right path to that. And this is where the B Corp certification came in. So a lot of extra work to get there. I mean, because I've been going through the process. But just like getting, any kind of other certification for your business, it's really about signaling that these are the things that matter.
Mm-hmm. Has it benefited you in a recruiting process?
I'm sure it has. It wasn't our core goal to just have it benefit us in the recruiting process, but it certainly makes it clearer and easier in terms of talking to potential recruits. I think it also, when people are looking at us from the outside, let's say prospects, it is that seal of approval, right, that says, oh yeah, those guys are actually putting a system behind what they're saying. It's not just empty marketing messaging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. I love that so much. So yeah, I think you've inspired me to want to go back on that path for us. So COVID changed everything. We went from having an office to, all being remote. And so, some of those questions environmentally, it's like, well, I don't know if everybody composts now. Some of it feels a little bit more daunting, but I suppose that the B Corp is also probably adapted as we all have. So, well, that is wonderful. Well, so my last question for you then is, when you now talk about what you're doing, and you think about the next few years, like this feels to me like this could be, something you do for a very long time. Are there other big problems that you're wanting to solve?
You mean after we've solved poverty?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that I'll be there to really see us solving this particular problem. I think we'll maybe hopefully make a dent within my lifetime. But the reality is that, this is like such a large problem to solve that it presents some pretty substantial, juicy abilities there for us to be there for a long time. Are there other problems that I'd like to see solved? Absolutely. It seems that there isn't a day that goes by where I don't go, but I've got this other thing, so I've got to focus on that. And so I've been throwing an ever extensive list of things that I would look to solve. And sometimes, a friend of mine will come and go, I'm looking to change jobs or start something new. I'll go, well, what about those problems here? Have you considered solving any of them?
I have a list. Yeah. Well, that's excellent. Well, I hope that you and that Casebook continue to grow in the way you want to, and you keep making this impact, because I agree with you. It is so, so needed. And so thank you for all that you have done to support this really very underserved community. So I hope it just continues to go great for you.
Okay.
So thanks for this amazing discussion today. I'm really grateful for it. Again, I think we could talk for hours about all of this, but I hope that this has been helpful for our listeners, and I'll see you next time on How I Turn the Corner. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining this exciting episode. We hope this discussion brings you closer to a better, healthier, and more rewarding workplace everyone deserves to be a part of. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast at turningthecornerllc.com/podcast. Don't forget to share this with your friends in the corporate world. And together, let's make this space a hub of growth and job satisfaction. If everyone loves where they are, they can always give their best without regrets. That's all for now. See you on the next one.